Good morning. My name is Douglas Griffin. This is my Sunday school class, and we are going through the Bible. We're in the book of Genesis. We are finishing the book of Genesis. We'll be done in a couple weeks. We're on chapter 48. Just to kind of recap in case someone is new, or just in case you have no idea what did we talk about last week because you've had so many things happen in the middle of the week. Can't remember last week. We've been studying Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob has 12 sons. Um, 10 of the sons didn't like son number 11. That's Joseph. And Joseph, hey, Susie. And Joseph was therefore sold off into slavery in Egypt by his brothers. There's a reason they didn't like him. We'll go into that later. But turns out God allowed that to happen, as so many things that look bad to us, like, oh man, I can't believe that happened. God allowed it, and then he turns it around for our good, right? That's what he does. So things that we think are horrible, we often, I hope that you do this, look back in life, go, you know what? That actually turned out to be a good thing. I thought that was a terrible thing, but I'm glad that happened that way because here's the good that has come from it. So, hey, Leslie. So, he's in Egypt and he ends up being like the vice president of Egypt. It's not really his title, but okay. So when his brothers show up because there's a famine in the land, Joseph's already in power and able to help them. And after many shenanigans, eventually he realizes this is all part of God's plan. God actually, even though you meant it for bad, God meant it for good and turned it around so I could help you. God put me here so I could help you. So he moves his family down to Egypt because there's 5 years of famine left. Now, they should have gone back after 5 years because God said to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, I've given you that land in Canaan. That's your land. I've given that to you. But they had it really nice in Egypt. Joseph made it really nice for them. And in fact, ended up enslaving the rest of the Egyptians, and that money kind of got funneled to his family. So they're in Goshen, living it up. Joseph's the vice president. They're like we're having a great time. Um, and they were. I mean, that's not an exaggeration. There was really no reason for them to leave. So instead of being there 5 years, they're 17 years. And Jacob, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, like the patriarch of that whole 12 brother clan, he calls Joseph in because he wants to bless Joseph's sons. And that's where we left off last week. In Genesis chapter 48, verse 13, it says, is that 13? Yes. And Joseph took both his sons. So he has two sons. Manasseh is the oldest, and then Ephraim is the youngest. So he took them both, Ephraim with his right hand toward Israel's left hand, and Manasseh with his left hand toward Israel's right hand. So he's manipulating it so that his father will lay his right hand on Manasseh, the oldest, and the left hand on Ephraim, the youngest, because they believed in preeminence and that the older son gets extra blessings and things get funneled through him. And so they believe the right hand is the hand of blessing and the left hand, like you weren't supposed to do many things with your left hand because they had it in society that the left hand was the hand that you used when you went to the bathroom. So your left hand, you shook with the right and you did everything right-handed. And if you had to use your left hand, okay, uh, so the right hand was just a big deal, right? However, uh, Jacob crosses because he just believes that the preeminent blessing is going to go to the younger son, Ephraim, which he's had some experience. He was the younger son between he and his twin brother Esau. He was the younger son. I mean, he's only the younger by, 3 minutes, but he was still the younger. And so he knows something about the preeminent blessing doesn't always have to go to the older one. So he crosses it, right? So he says, then Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on Ephraim's head. who was the younger, and his left hand of Manasseh's head, guiding his hands knowingly, for Manasseh was the firstborn, so he knows what he's doing. And now he blesses Joseph first. Now, again, Joseph was sold into slavery by his 10 older brothers. And a lot of this rivalry between Joseph and the other brothers began with Jacob because of his favorable treatment. It did not end up crippling Joseph. So you can think, oh, I was wrong, I was wrong. But if God has a plan for you, other people cannot stop God's plan for you, right? They can't stop it. We think they did. Oh no, they didn't show up on time, or they were late with their jet, or whatever, right? But if God's got a plan for you, you can't stop it. And God had already had a plan for Joseph. He knew how he was going to use them. But the enmity, the hatred between the brothers, that came a lot of times from Jacob and the rivalry between his two wives. Now, and he had two wives because his uncle had tricked him. And Leah is the oldest sister, and he wanted Rachel, the younger sister, and his Laban, his uncle, tricked them and switched them, and there's a lot of switching and tricking going on, right? So he ended up marrying the wrong wife in his mind. Again, God allowed it because it was part of his plan, but he at the time didn't think that. Jacob thought, you can mess up God's plan. God wanted me to have Rachel, and you tricked me into Leah. So he was bitter the whole time, not realizing, the way that worked out, that was God's plan. The devil can't mess up God's plan. People teach that he can, but the devil is not God's opposite equal. They're not the two of them fighting for control of the universe, and sometimes the devil wins, and some days God wins, and we but we teach that, and that's why people walk around so angry and frustrated sometimes. How did that person get elected, or how did he get in charge, or how did it's like God is in charge of everything. The devil doesn't ever win. Otherwise, we need to elect a new God. If he's just like your Uncle Bill or something, and sometimes he wins, sometimes he loses, we need to have a recount for God. The God in the Bible, he thinks he's in charge of everything. He thinks everything happens that flows through him. Yeah, the good and the bad. He allows the bad. He allows the bad. He allows the bad. God doesn't go to sleep or go on vacation, or God doesn't go, oh man, I could have fixed that, but you messed it up, and now what am I going to do? He knows what bad thing you're about to do. He sees it way before you thought of it, and he already has a plan to counteract it. So, okay, I'm going to let you do that bad thing, and then I'm sending the consequences to teach you a lesson, and then I'm also going to use it to help that person over there. And that's not to encourage us to do the bad thing. Just because God turns the bad thing into a good thing later on, that's not to encourage, oh, well, I can just do whatever I want, because he makes sure he sends consequences. There are consequences for our bad thing so that we can learn, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Even though God turned it out eventually for good, we don't want those consequences. It's better that we just do the good thing from the beginning. Right? But even if we do a bad thing, that doesn't thwart God's plan. So them sending Joseph off, that didn't thwart God's plan. Joseph ended up saving their lives. So God turns it all for good because he's smarter than us. Yay, God. So glad that he's God and not us. So when this thing happened with Joseph, where he got Leah, and then but he really wanted Rachel, he was bitter the whole time. And are you bitter? Is there something you're bitter about in your life because you think this was not supposed to have gone that way? As opposed to, I know that person meant it for bad, but I also believe God can turn it around for good. So I'm going to step back and see what's the good that can come from this, because I know God didn't just discover that this was happening. He knew way in advance it was going to happen, so he must have some kind of plan. And Jacob could have stepped back and said, okay, I ended up married to Leah first. I wanted Rachel, but I ended up married to Leah first, so let's see what good can come of this. In Genesis chapter 29, verse 31, going back 20 chapters, it says, when the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, because That's how Jacob reacted. He just ignored her. He hated her. He despised her, made fun of her. I love Rachel, not you. Now he's married to both of them, Leah first, then Rachel. He says, when the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. So God's looking at the situation and saying, Laban didn't fool me. Laban may have fooled you, but he didn't fool me. I knew this was going to happen. And I have a place for Leah. I have a place for Rachel. So even when somebody does that bad thing, God's got a plan to fix it. He's not. So he opened Leah's womb first. Both women are competing to have children, and he gives her 4 kids in a row. Rachel, nothing. Then Rachel gets upset and says, "Well, here, have sex with my maid, and I'll adopt her kids." So the maid has 2 kids. Rachel still nothing. Leah sees that and says, "Well, you can have sex with my maid," and then she gets 2 more kids from her maid. So now there's 8 kids still. Rachel has she's the only one has had 0. Then Leah has 2 more kids. 2 more kids. Um, in fact, Rachel's there's 10 kids being born, 10 sons. We don't know how many women were girls because they never counted the girls because that's how they were. But the guys, there's 10 sons. God is blessed for 10 sons and Rachel 0 to show Jacob. You think that Leah is a mistake. I just gave her 6 kids. Doesn't that mean anything? And and we've got to look at life sometimes because we can have our eyes so fixed on this over here and it's not working, not working, not working. This over there is working. But we say, no, this is supposed to work. I'm going to make this work. I'm going to make it work. And it's not working. And we don't ever think, is that a lesson from God? Is God trying to show me something? How come that never works out? And how come this over here does? And so Leah's got 6 kids. Rachel has 0. Is God trying to tell me something? So Rachel comes to him and says, give me a child or I'll die. And in Genesis chapter 30, Jacob's anger was aroused against Rachel when she said that. And he says, am I in the place of God? Who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb? Well, I didn't do it. God did it. And that was a sign to Jacob. Oh, God's withholding the fruit of, maybe it's because of how badly I'm treating Leah and how much I'm favoring Rachel. Maybe God's trying to teach me a lesson. But anyway, after 10 kids, Rachel finally has a baby. And it says, that it came to pass in verse 25 of Genesis chapter 30, I'm just kind of reviewing, came to pass when Rachel had born Joseph, because she finally has a child, that Jacob says to Laban, send me away that I may go to my own place and to my own country. Like finally, now that Rachel finally has had a child, I can leave. And so the whole family's kind of like in servitude to Laban until Rachel has a child. And then, oh, well, now that, and he loved Joseph, and all the other kids noticed, the other 10 boys noticed, look how much he's loving Joseph. In fact, in Genesis chapter 33, verses 1 and 2, when Jacob's about to run into his brother Esau, who he thinks is ready to kill him, it says, now Jacob lifted his eyes and looked, and there Esau was coming. And he's thinking, Esau's about to kill me. Esau's going to kill me. And with him were 400 men, which is just proof. I know he's going to kill me. And so a lot of times we panic, right? The worst is about to happen, and we've made ourselves crazy. And God's like, hello, hello, I'm still here. Hello, stop freaking out. So it says, so he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 maidservants, right? Here, you take Leah, you take your 6, you take your 2, you take your 2, and Rachel, you just have Joseph. And at that time, Rachel didn't have Benjamin. She just had 1 child. So there's 10 boys and then Rachel with her child. And it says that, and he put the maidservants and their children in the front, like, you are most expendable. Zilpah, Bilhah, your 2 sons each. If Esau comes and start killing people, you go first. And he says, and he put Leah and her 6 children behind them, and then Rachel and Joseph last, telling all the other sons who are looking, and they're all older. They're old enough to see. So if we die, that's okay. But he's making sure that he can run away with Rachel and Joseph. That made them feel some kind of way about Joseph. Oh, what a shock that they hated Joseph. He gave him a coat of many colors. Jacob gave him. He's fostering this envy between the brothers and Joseph. And he's kind of doing the same thing right here. He's bringing in Joseph in special. And he's saying, I'm going to adopt your kids as though they were one of the, even though they're my grandkids, I'm going to put them on the level of my sons and divide up my property with them, Joseph. And I'm going to pray for you a special blessing just for you. Not understanding what he's doing, not only to the brothers who are recognizing this favoritism for Joseph, but what this does to Joseph's head. I am special. And now my kids are going to be treated like they are sons instead of grandchildren. Aren't they special? Okay, so I'm just setting the scene because even though Joseph rescues his brothers, Jacob, the father, continues to build this animosity and building up Joseph's head like you're special, you're special, you're special. And if just because God uses you doesn't make you special, that's God is using you. That makes God special, make you special. We're just a vessel that God flows money through, our love through, our wisdom and counseling through. God's flowing it through us. It doesn't make us anything other than we are but dust. Like my friend says, we are but dust. So God was pouring through Joseph to save them, but it makes Joseph think, I must be special. Look how much attention I get. In Genesis chapter 48, back to that chapter, verse 16, he says, so he blesses Joseph. Then he says, bless the lads. Let my name be upon them, and the name of my fathers, Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. So whenever, we always say Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I want them to say Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Ephraim, and Manasseh. Like they're going to take my name and they're going to be part of history, right? Ephraim and Manasseh. And he really did. I mean, he gave them, he made them equal. He made the grandkids equal to the sons. In First Chronicles chapter 5, verse 1 and 2, I'd read this last week. First Chronicles, and the Chronicles is just recording all the family histories. That's all it does. He says, now the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, and it says, and he was indeed the firstborn. Let's remember that. But because he defiled his father's bed, his birthright was given to the sons of Joseph. Now that's not how it goes. Joseph was son number 11. If the son number 1 messes up, it goes to son number 2 son. Now son number 2 was Simeon. He had messed up in Jacob's eyes. So then there we go son number 3, Levi. Well, Levi was there with Simeon when he messed up. So then we go to Judah. Well, he says 1, 2, 3, 11, and skip sons 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Just skip them. And Joseph was literally the 11th born son. So his birthright was given to the sons of Joseph, and the son of Israel, so that the genealogy is not listed according to birthright. It's listed funny, like because Ephraim and Manasseh, who were grandkids, suddenly have snuck in there. It says, yet Judah prevailed over his brothers. It turned out Judah was next in line, right? If Reuben and Simeon and Levi, sons 1, 2, and 3 mess up, the son number 4 is Judah. He was next in line, and it says, yet Judah prevailed over his brothers, and from him came a ruler. Although the birthright was given to Joseph, God said, no, I picked Judah to do this. So you've got Judah versus Joseph. It begins here, Judah versus Joseph. And everybody understood that Reuben had messed up and that Simeon and Levi were on the outs, but Judah became a leader. And here's how you can tell when you're reading the Bible. You just read a couple generations later and see what happened. Because sometimes God does not immediately come down and say, that was wrong. You just have to keep looking. Just look a little bit. Just wait a little bit. You see what consequences happen down the line, or what blessings come. And you go, oh, I see how God blessed from that. I thought that was a mistake. But when that person suggested I do that, and I grudgingly did it, look how God blessed. So I guess that was God speaking to me through that person. Or when I didn't listen and I said, no, it's supposed to go this way, and it all kind of falls apart in the end. You go, That's God's way of showing me you did not listen, right? So we can look often at the result. So even though Jacob picked Joseph, and even though we pick a Joseph, we say this person or this job or this car or this. In the end, the car that kept running was that Honda that I got off the used car lot. That ran for 25 years. And that brand new car that I got has just cost me twice as much money in repairs. But And so you can kind of look at the consequences down the line and go, I should have listened, taken that, or, right? So you have to wait a while. Okay, so he's blessing Joseph, he's blessing the sons. Now, it says, Genesis chapter 48, verse 17 says, now when Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim, right? He switched it, right? Ephraim. It displeased him, so he took hold of his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. Like, no, the right hand goes on the oldest son's head. And Joseph said to his father, not so, my father, for this one is the firstborn. It's like, you got this one. Put your right hand on his head. Verse 19 of Genesis chapter 48 says, but his father refused and said, I know, my son, I know. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. But truly, his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his descendants shall become a multitude of nations. Which is interesting. We're going to get into that later, next week. A multitude of nations. Okay, so he blessed them that day, saying, by you Israel will bless, saying. So the children of Israel was blessed, saying, may God make you as Ephraim and Manasseh. And this becomes a saying in Jewish culture. God make you as Ephraim and Manasseh. Just like it says, may God make you like Ruth and like Esther, because they became prominent and important in history. May God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. They did become prominent and important in history. But we're going to look at, but what happened in the end? Because I know what happened with Judah. From Judah, we get David and we get Jesus. Even though Ephraim and Manasseh were blessed, let's just follow, right? He says, so may God bless you as Ephraim and Manasseh. Like there's going to be a saying, and thus he set Ephraim before Manasseh. He set them. Did God set them? Did God want it that way? I don't know. We have to just look. So we're just going to go over a little history. Just like, let's fast forward, because this is how we learn, right? The Bible is there as our examples. The only person in the Bible that we look at every decision they made and say, that's right, that's right, that's right, is Jesus. He's God's representative. God put on a flesh suit. We call that Jesus. That person, Jesus, right? But it's God in the flesh. So when God's in heaven, I don't know why I keep looking up like heaven's not in the ceiling. But when God's in heaven, say he's Father God. When God comes to earth in fleshly form, his name is Jesus. But it's still God. It's the same God. It's not a different God. There's not two gods. And so we know that everything that Jesus said and did was correct, right? But we don't deify anybody else in the Bible. Moses made some mistakes. David made some mistakes. Let's see what happened to Ephraim. Okay, so in Joshua chapter 17, verse 14, when Joshua is dividing up the land. Now, Joshua is from the tribe of Ephraim. He's descendant of Joseph, right? Joseph had two kids, Ephraim and Manasseh. So he's descended from Ephraim. God's put him in charge of dividing up the land. Once they crossed over the Jordan into the promised land, they're back in Canaan finally, 200 years later. Instead of 5 years later, they should have left after 5 years, but they decided to stay. And then, oops, we should have left because now we're enslaved. Our fault. We should have listened. They finally leave, and now they're finally going back into the land. And so Joshua is dividing up the land. Joshua's dividing up the land. You're going to take this, you're going to take that, right? He's dividing it up. Now they're going to have to take it because the Canaanites live all over the land. So they're going to have to take it. But they're saying they're dividing up who's going to take what, right? And it says, then the children of Joseph, after Manasseh, from that line, spoke to Joshua, not actually Ephraim and Manasseh, but the children from those lines, because it's 200 years later. So, spoke to Joshua saying, why have you given us only one lot and one share to inherit, since we are a great people? Now, they should be grateful that both of them got one, because Joseph should have just gotten one lot, but he's gotten two. He's getting, one for Ephraim, one for Manasseh. So somebody got squeezed out already. But they said, you should have given us more, because look how we have grown through the years. We are a great people, it says, inasmuch as the Lord has blessed us until now. So, and Joseph spoke to the house of Joseph. Joshua spoke to the house of Joseph. Joshua, who is from that house, but he's just being fair when he's parsing out. So Joshua spoke to the house of Joseph, to Ephraim and Manasseh, not literally them, but their descendants, saying, you are a great people and have great power. So you should not only have one lot. I mean, that's not how it's going to work out. I've given you this land, and they've got these hills and mountains and stuff that they're supposed to take that are up, that's north of Jerusalem. He says, but the mountain country shall be yours. So not only to give you that land, the mountain country, that's, although it's wooded, I'll just read what it says. You shall cut it down, and its farther extent shall be yours. Like, you're just looking at the valley, but you get those mountains too. And if you just cut down all the trees and you look, you do you. You've got as much as you want to take. I'm giving you the starter part, but you're going to take all that stuff. He says, you shall cut it down to its farther extent, it shall be yours. For you shall drive out the Canaanites, though they have iron chariots and strong. Don't forget, you're stronger than them. You think you're so strong. So, and let me tell you that nobody else complained other than the descendants of Joseph, because they feel very entitled, because Jacob gave them a special blessing. And so when they divided up the land, everybody said, okay, I'll go conquer it. But the children of Joseph said, we should get more. Like, you're already getting more. You're already getting 2 and you should only get 1. But we should get 4, shouldn't we? Said, no, you don't need to have more. Just take what God's put in front of you and conquer it, and you'll see how much land. I really have given you a lot of land. And he had. So they did, and they went and they conquered. Joshua 19, verse 51. So after they had finally parceled all the land, now people still have to go and conquer it, right? But they parceled out all the land. It says, these were the inheritance which Eleazar the priest, Joshua the son of Nun, and the heads of the fathers of the tribes of the children of Israel divided as an inheritance by lot. So they spend the first 20 chapters of Joshua just dividing up the land, right? They haven't all conquered it yet, but they divided it up. So they listed also, everybody will know officially, this is what I've officially given everybody. But they divided up the lot in Shiloh. This will become significant later, before the Lord, at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. So they made an end of dividing the country. So it took them all to chapter 19 to find the end dividing of the country. But they divided it in Shiloh. That's where Joshua had everybody meet. Shiloh is in Joseph's territory, that land that was given to Joseph's kids, Ephraim and Manasseh, specifically Ephraim. And that's where they bought the Ark of the Covenant, and that's where they brought the tabernacle that God had told them to build. So the first tabernacle was not in Jerusalem, but it was in Shiloh, which is an important name later, in Shiloh, where God's presence first rested, in Ephraim's land. Okay, in Judges chapter 24, verse 1, it says, so Joshua's about to retire. Like, I'm about to retire, yay, get my pension. Then Joshua gathered all the tribes of Israel to Shechem. This is the other place. So Shiloh is near Shechem. These are the 2 places you want to remember. And called for the elders of Israel, for their heads, for their judges, and for their officers, and they presented themselves before God. So the 2 places that were very important were Shiloh and Shechem, and they were both in Ephraim's territory. So already Ephraim's getting more attention. Like, look, I look at all the attention that I get. Everything happens here. Big important meetings happen in my territory. The tabernacle here in my territory. So therefore I'm important. Now, they now start going out and conquering the land, different tribes conquering the land. And you know the story of Gideon, because we're just going to trace what happens when you give somebody a big head and they start to believe that what God is doing through them is about them, not about God. Because God will use someone, give them a great acting gift or a great business acumen or something, and then you start to think, ooh, that's about me. And God lets you think that for a while, and then he's like, oops, surprise, it wasn't about you. Okay, so Gideon, remember God comes to Gideon, and Gideon is scared, and but the angel has to come and, you can do this, Gideon, you can do it. Okay, Gideon is from the tribe of Manasseh. so descended from Joseph, but the Manasseh side, the side that got shortchanged, like Ephraim, you're going to get more than Manasseh. Okay. So he said to him, O Lord, how can I save Israel? This is Gideon talking to the angel. Indeed, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh. Not only am I descended from Manasseh, but we're the smallest. Like Ephraim is our big brother, and even though Ephraim was the youngest, look how God's blessed him. And it's just normal complaining from Gideon. That's what he does. And I am the least in my father's house. And the Lord said to him, surely I will be with you, and you shall defeat the Midianites as one man. God's saying, I'm picking you on purpose because I want to get the glory. So I know you're the least and yes, because it's not going to be about you. It's going to be about me. And if I pick the strongest and the biggest and the most incredible, then everybody thinks, oh, it's because they were so strong that happened, because they were so smart that it happened, because they were so rich that it happened. And I don't share my glory with anybody else. So yeah, Gideon, I picked you on purpose. So Gideon gets 30,000 people together and they go, okay, now we're going to attack. And God says, no, can't do it with 30,000. And he reduces it down to 10,000. And from 10,000, he reduces it to 300. And Gideon's like, what? How are we going to attack all those people? Because it's God, not you. It's not you. Calm down. It's me. I'm going to do it. We got to remember that. Whatever thing that we are faced, that job, opportunity that you have, not that you shouldn't dress up and wash up and look nice, but God's going to make it happen. You know, you do what you know to do, but you don't have to like stress over it, because if God has that job for you, you're going to get it, right? So you do what you do and then let God do the rest. So in Judges chapter 7, verse 22, it says, when the 300, which is all God allowed him, blew the trumpets, the Lord set every man's sword against his companion throughout the whole camp of the Midianites. They started panicking. The Midianites, oh my God, the trumpets, there's thousands of them. There wasn't, there's 300. And they started running into each other like a Lucy sketch and like the Keystone Cops. And they're fighting each other because they're so scared. Like the 300 didn't have to do anything but blow trumpets. It's like marking around Jericho. They just had to walk around Jericho. The walls came down. God keeps trying to say, just be obedient, do the little thing I told you to do. You may not know how it's going to bring the walls down. You don't know how it's going to do it. But if you're just obedient to do the thing I told you to do, you'll see the results. So they just blew the trumpets. The whole camp was going crazy. It says the army fled to Beth Acacia toward Zerara, as far as the borders of Abel Meholah and Taba. All right, so they just started running and screaming. Verse 24 says, and this is Judges chapter 7, then Gideon sent messengers throughout all the mountains of Ephraim, saying, come down against the Midianites, because they're like running, like they've run. He says, come down against the Midianites and seize from them the watering places as far as Beth Barah and the Jordan. Because now they've left all these wells and everything, because they've just fled away. Like, just come on down. You can help us secure these wells and things. You don't have to do any fighting. There's nothing you have to do. But we're going to share what we've got with you, Ephraim. And then all the men of Ephraim gathered together and seized the watering places as far as Beth Barah and the Jordan. The very next verse is in Judges chapter 8, verse 1. It's the very next verse. The Bible's not divided into chapters. It's just like a scroll. So that happens, and then the very next thing, it says, now the men of Ephraim said to him, says to Gideon, why have you done this to us by not calling us when you went to fight with the Midianites? And they reprimanded him sharply, like, we're important. Why have you should have called us when you went to fight, because Ephraim's been told, you know, we got that special blessing. We were blessed above you. Jacob told that we were above you, and you can't just go fighting on your own. And God's like, I did that. And Gideon made up some excuse. Well, you know, God, but Ephraim is mad because they want to be considered. They want to get all the applause from everybody. They want the credit. And sometimes that's really important to people, who gets the credit, right? So they wanted the credit. In Judges chapter 11, it says this, verse 29 says, the Spirit of God came on Jephthah. He's part of Manasseh also. No, and don't forget, Jacob said, put Ephraim above Manasseh. So he's part of Manasseh. And it says, and he passed through Gilead and Manasseh, and passed through Mizpah of Gilead, and from Mizpah of Gilead he advanced toward the people of Ammon. So he's going to attack the Ammonites. Ammon comes from Lot, of Sodom and Gomorrah, that Lot, of Abraham's nephew, Lot. He had two sons, Moab and Ammon. And so the Ammonites are fighting them. even though they're related, they're cousins, but still they're angry because look how God's blessing them. Instead of saying, I want to join in with you so God will bless me too. And there's like, we're going to take you down because God's blessing you so much. And you can't take down what God's blessing. So the Ammonites have come to attack the tribe of Manasseh, right? And the Spirit of God comes on Jephthah. So they win, they defeat them. And the very next verse, Judges chapter 12, verse 1, it says, Then the men of Ephraim gathered together, crossed over Zaphon, and said to Jephthah, who just won this great battle, Why did you cross over to fight against people of Ammon and did not call us to go with you? We will burn your house down on you with fire. So this is how upset they are. Other people are getting credit, other people are doing things, and you're not calling on us, and we're special, and we're supposed to get all the credit because we were prayed for. And Jacob said that we were above you, and God's going to bless us above you. And then that's confusion on they don't on how what a blessing means. It doesn't mean that you get to be the one that gets picked all the time and that you're the one, we're confused. Because Ephraim was blessed. They were a large people. And that's really all that Jacob said, even though more, I guess, was implied in Ephraim's mind. But they're ready to fight Manasseh all because Manasseh's doing some nice things. And Ephraim you go out and conquer some people instead of being mad that we're conquering people. God came to us and the Spirit of God came upon me and I did what he told me to do. But Ephraim is mad because other people are getting the glory. It continues. So the tribe of Israel, I mean, all these 12 tribes, they want a king because they're tired of self-governing. They don't, and God's too slow. When they pray to God, God doesn't answer them immediately. He doesn't set a bush on fire like he did with Moses. And so that gets frustrating to people. And we like instant answers. That's why we get to go to our daily horoscope. It'll just tell us for that day, here's what you're going to have a good day and don't make any deals. We're like, yay, now I know what to do for today because I asked God, but he was too slow. And so let me read my horoscope or let me call up Madame Sula or let me, read this book or because we want instant answers. It's just hard for us to wait. And there's a blessing that comes through patience and waiting. God does that on purpose. It helps grow us. But they want it instant. And a king, you can go right to a king and say, can we have this? And the king will say, yes or no, right to your face. So why even fool with God? Let's just get a king. God says, I don't want you to have a king. We want a king. Okay, I'm gonna let you have a king and you're gonna be bitter. So they give them Saul. Saul messes up. And finally, God gives them David as their king. He's from the tribe of Judah. He's not from Ephraim. Let me tell you, Ephraim is not happy about that because we got blessed before you, Judah, and we've got the birthright and we've got a big head now. And we've got the most land. And so David has a son, Solomon. Now, here's what Solomon did. Solomon was an interesting person. And when we read through Kings, you'll find it very interesting. In 1 Kings chapter 9, verse 10, it says, Now it happened at the end of 20 years when Solomon had built 2 houses. So Solomon's a king. 20 years after he's anointed, he has built 2 houses. He built the house of the Lord and the king's house. So he built this incredible temple on Mount Zion in the land of Judah, because that's where he's from. And he built this gorgeous palace. The palace of Solomon was like world renowned. The Queen of Sheba came to look at it. He's spending. Now, where's he getting all this money from? He's taxing the other tribes, right, to build up his stuff in Judah. Hiram, the king of Tyre, had supplied Solomon with cedar and cypress and gold. That's what it says here in 1 Kings chapter 9, verse 11. So he made a deal with the king of Tyre, bring in, because the cedar wood that was in Tyre was better than the wood they had. Bring it down here, and it's good. And he gave him gold and his cypress, as much as he desired. And that King Solomon gave Hiram, in exchange for that, 20 cities in the land of Galilee. Well, that's up in Ephraim's territory. He just said, I'm going to give away 20 cities to pay for what we're doing down here in Judah, because there's a big rivalry between Judah and Ephraim and Joseph. We're going to go into that next week. So Ephraim's not happy that you just gave away some of our cities to pay for your palaces. So this causes a problem. In 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 28, it says, then Solomon's son, he's got a son Rehoboam, right? And Solomon knows he's about to retire. So it says, then the man Jeroboam, who was a mighty man of valor, and Solomon, seeing that the young man was industrious. So Solomon sees that Jeroboam, like, ooh, Jeroboam, I should put him over my armies and stuff that I'm raising. It says he made him the officer over all the labor force of the house of Joseph. So he's putting the people of the house of Joseph to work to help build his palaces and stuff. And says, but Jeroboam, I'm going to put you over Ephraim and Manasseh, and you be over that labor force. So he elevates Jeroboam. In 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 26, it says, then Solomon's servant, Jeroboam, who was the son of Nebat, an Ephraimite from Zeredah, whose mother's name was Zeruiah, a widow, also rebelled against the king. So Jeroboam, who's been put in charge, who's from Ephraim, who secretly mad at Solomon, son of Judah, for giving away their land and taxing them and using this workforce, he starts a rebellion against the king. So this is someone from Ephraim, Joseph, right, line, is rebelling against King Solomon because this is not fair. In 1 Kings chapter 12, verse 25, it says, then Jeroboam built Shechem in the mountains of Ephraim, and he dwelt there. Okay, so we'll get into it next week, but Jeroboam rebels and leads a rebellion. This is Joseph leading rebellion against the line of Judah. David, Solomon, Rehoboam, they're all from the line of Judah. He leads a rebellion and he talks the 10 tribes into going with him. And all they leave is Judah and Benjamin, right? And don't forget that Judah saved Benjamin's life. Judah is the one when Joseph was saying, I'm going to keep Benjamin. Now, that's because Benjamin was his brother. But when they didn't know who Joseph was, they think Joseph's this wazir in Egypt. I'm going to keep Benjamin. Judah's the one that says, no, take me. I will sacrifice my life for him. And that's the thing that breaks Joseph's heart. Oh man, look how they've changed, and look what Judah's doing for his little brother. And that's when he reveals, okay, I'm really Joseph. Surprise. All right. So Benjamin feels forever indebted to Joseph, but also to Judah, because you're the one that sacrificed for me. So when the 10 tribes split away, Benjamin stays with Judah. That's who he feels closest to. And who leads this rebellion against the house of Judah? Jeroboam, who's from the tribe of Ephraim, who's Joseph's people. He builds in Shechem his own palace and his own temple. Like, we don't need Jerusalem and Judah and all that. We just do our own thing. So it said Jeroboam built Shechem in the mountains of Ephraim, and he dwelt there. Also, he went out from there and built Penuel. Penuel is where Jacob had where he wrestled with the angel, right? So that became a holy place. So Shechem is a holy place. Penuel is a holy place. And it says, and Jeroboam said in his heart, now the kingdom, no, I'm sorry, let me read that better. Now the kingdom may return to the house of David. Like, I know I've pulled them away and I'm finally declared myself king. And now so I've declared myself king. And so, but I don't want them to return to the house of David, even though God had said to Jeroboam, I'm only doing this. I'm going to let you go ahead and take these 10 kingdoms because I'm reprimanding them. I'm trying to get them to see. It's not a permanent thing. I'm doing this because Rehoboam's gotten a little crazy, and I want him to have some consequences. So God gives the consequences, but not punishment. He gives the consequences, right? So that we'll go, oh man, I messed up, and that we'll repent. But it wasn't supposed to be some permanent thing. I'm still using Judah, he says. I'm still using Judah, he tells him. This is still who the Messiah is going to come through. So Jeroboam knows that. It's like, uh-oh, they may return at some point, and I want the glory. Because Ephraim has wanted the glory all along, right? Ephraim's yelling at Gideon, how come you didn't call us so we can get the glory? He yells at Jephthah, why didn't you call us? because we want to come in and get the credit and get the glory. So now that they finally do have the glory, he's afraid he might lose it. So he says the kingdom may return to the house of David. If these people go up to offer sacrifices in the house of the Lord of Jerusalem, if they go to Jerusalem to offer their sacrifices, then the heart of this people will turn back to their Lord, Rehoboam, king of Judah, and they will kill me and go back to Rehoboam, king of Judah. And again, there's always been this rivalry between Joseph and Judah. It's just been fostered. Who created it? Their father. And so I can't have them go back to Judah and to Jerusalem. That'll be terrible. And we feel that way. Oh, if things don't go my way, that's going to mess everything up. That's going to mess up God's plans. Like, no, God doesn't want it to go your way. God wants things to go his way. And so he says, therefore, the king asked advice, and he made 2 calves of gold, because that always works out, and said to the people, it is too much for you to go to Jerusalem. Don't go to Jerusalem. Here are your gods, O Israel, which brought you up from the land of Egypt. Remember how these gods, some story about the mountain and Mount Sinai and golden calves. You remember that? So here they are. And so, and so the people went and worshiped there and started worshiping idols because Jeroboam was so desperate to hold on to power. God had gave him a little bit, and so he wanted more. And he wanted to hold on to it. And you can't hold on to something that God's ripping from you. You can try all you want, and you can do, look at me, hey, over here, over here. But if God's turning his face elsewhere, it does you no good, right? So, so this, again, all starts with Jacob. Let me secretly bless Joseph and his kids. And in the end, this will really work out. Well, what it did is it caused a civil war, and it splits the kingdom. Now it's 10 versus 2, but God's in the 2. God's in Judah, and we can find ourselves on the wrong side because we are so busy wanting attention for ourselves and wanting to be loved. I want people like me, and instead of I want to do what God wants. So again, when he's praying, Jacob is praying over his kids. Ephraim will be over Manasseh, and God's going to bless you. Yes, but what is that going to? You having this private meeting with Joseph and kind of secretly giving it. What's that going to eventually do? What's that going to make Ephraim think? Right. So back to where we were. We're almost done with where we were. Then Israel says to Joseph, back to the present. Israel is blessing Ephraim and Manasseh and saying, God's going to bless you, but he's going to bless Ephraim more. Okay. Then Israel said to Joseph, behold, I am dying, but God will be with you and bring you back to the land of your fathers. So even though I'm dying, he's going to bring you back to the land. And in the previous chapter, he'd already made Joseph promise, please take me back to Canaan. He's taking me back to Canaan. So he put his hand under his thigh and said, okay, I'll bring you back to Canaan. And he says, now I'm dying, but he's going to bring you too back to Canaan because Abraham, Isaac, Jacob is clear. They're supposed to be in Canaan. They're not supposed to stay in Egypt. Now, unfortunately, they didn't stay in Canaan. They took Joseph. They took Jacob to Canaan and buried him there, but they all came back to Egypt. And so it was a couple hundred years later. In Joshua chapter 24, verse 32, it says, the bones of Joseph, which the children of Egypt had brought up out of Egypt. So when he died, when Joseph died, they preserved his bones for a couple hundred years. They buried at Shechem. So remember, Shechem is that it belongs to Ephraim. Right? We keep hearing the name of Shechem in the plot of ground which Jacob had bought from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem. So Shechem was actually a person. Jacob, remember, he buys the land from Hamor, and his son is named Shechem. Shechem is the son that did that horrible stuff to his daughter Dinah. So it says they brought him back to the plot of ground which Jacob had brought from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, for 100 pieces of silver, which had become an inheritance of the children of Joseph. Joseph decided, I'm going to give this land that I bought to Joseph. This is his land. Just moreover, I have given you one portion above your brother. So not only are you going to go back to the land of your fathers, now Jacob didn't know that he wouldn't go back for 200 years. He didn't know they were going to carry his son's bones back. He just knew, you're going to end up back there, I can tell. And sometimes God would tell us about something, give us a preview. This is going to work out for you, or you're going to end up at that college, or God will just give you a feeling about something. Jacob didn't know it'd be 200 years before it happened, but he knew, Joseph, you're going to end up back there. It'll be your bones because you're disobedient, but you'll be back there, and that's all that matters. So he says, moreover, I've given you one portion above your brothers, which I took from the hand of the Amorite with my sword and my bow. Now, this land that he's saying that he took with his sword and his bow, so he bought half of Shechem, right? But they took the other half. This is that story when Shechem, the son, takes Dinah, and they're not married, and has sex with her, and the brothers find out, and then Simeon and Levi go in and they kill everybody in Shechem. So they actually took the land. Simeon and Levi actually are the ones that took the other half of Shechem, right? Jacob had bought half of it, and then they took their neighbor. They killed everybody. So now they have two big plots of land, and they just called the whole thing Shechem. It's interesting that Jacob says, I took it with my sword and that bow, because he was very upset when it happened. In Genesis chapter 34, verse 30, it says, then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, you have troubled me by making me obnoxious among the inhabitants of this land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites. Since I'm few in number, they will gather themselves together against me and kill me, and I shall be destroyed, my household and I. Look what you did. Now, none of that ever happened. Jacob loved to catastrophize. Esau's going to kill me. And he was still the same person his whole life, bless his heart. They're going to cut. None of that happened. So, but he was mad at them at first, but now he's pridefully has accepted, like, this is my land that I took with my sword and my bow. Well, he didn't take it. His sons took it. But, I'm giving you all of that land, Joseph, that Shechem. But so even though he was mad that they had taken it and done all that stuff, a few years later, in Genesis chapter 37, verse 13, it says, and Israel said to Joseph, are not your brothers feeding the flocks up in Shechem? Go, I'll send you to them. So he says, go up to Shechem and check on your brothers. And that was like that cycle. That's where it began. The brothers are up in Shechem. They see Joseph coming. They kidnap him, throw him in a well, sell him off to Egypt, and it all comes full circle. Now to Joseph, he's giving that land. Remember that land where they kidnapped you and traumatized you? You get to have that land. Let's see how that works out for you. Oh, your descendants going to build an idol worshiping castle there and lead the Israelites astray? Shechem's going to be a good place for you. I just feel it somewhere. So anyway, so this is Jacob. And again, we judge the Bible, what individuals do in the Bible, by the consequences that come later. Is there blessing that stems from this later? Or are there consequences that stem from it later? That's how we know, okay, this was a good decision or a bad decision. Okay, this person was following God, this person wasn't following God. The only person we don't have to judge that and wait to see what happened is Jesus. Everything he said, everything he did, we know is correct. But these other people in the Bible, sometimes they were following God, sometimes they were just doing their own thing. And we only know that once we look at the results. It could be 10 years later, it could be generations later, and we go, oh, look how that all blew up on them. So that was just that person deciding to do that. That wasn't God. But we got to learn to do that in our own lives, making choices and going, is this working out or is this not working out? Oh, that over there, that seems to be the area that God's blessing. This area that I'm keep knocking my head against, maybe that was just my choice. Maybe this is my decision. Maybe I was the one saying, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this, because it never did work out. But look, this thing over here seems to be prospering. Maybe I should look where God is prospering and say, okay, maybe that's how God is showing me what he wants me to do, because God shows us, right? Now, again, sometimes God tells you something to do, and it takes a while before it all pays off. So just because something's not working out immediately doesn't mean it's not God. You just have to keep looking at it. You have to, if you know that you know that you know God sent you somewhere or God told you to do something, it may not immediately work out, but it may eventually become a blessing, right? So we just have to be patient. That's why you let patience have its full work, so you can tell whether it be of God or not. You just have to be patient. Say, "This is not working out at first." But I waited. Those who wait on the Lord, and look, it finally did work out. I can see now that that was God blessing, right? But sometimes you wait your whole lifetime. That just got worse and worse and worse. I think God's trying to show me something, right? But it's in the long view. You have to take the long view. And we have to take the long view sometimes. So we're gonna stop here because Jacob's in the middle of the long view. But next week he blesses all the sons and predicts what's going to happen to them. He's not predicting. He tells them, here's what's going to happen to you. Here's what's going to happen to you. Because he's laying his, but it's his last act. And he's finally kind of in tune to God when he's not focused on Joseph. Joseph, God's going to use you. When he's just looking at all of his sons and loving all of his sons equally, then God speaks through him and he tells them whether, and we're going to examine why, what happened to each of these sons, and because that's going to help us discover, okay, what does God have for me to do, right? We can see ourselves in different of these people in the Bible, and because God is repetitive. See how I bless this person? That's how I'm blessing you. So I gave this person this talent. That's just like you. See how person gave this person this type of drive? Yours is similar to that. And you can see how I led and guided this person. So it helps. So the Bible is just full of, if you want to know what to do with your life, read the Bible. Because God shows himself and repeats himself. Okay, so I'm done. I keep talking. I won't shut up. So thank you so much again for listening in. At 11, I will also be on the church service, the Good Shepherds, and we're going through the book of Joshua. So I'm inviting everyone at 11 o'clock, especially the Good Shepherd members. But if you just are bored out of your mind, in an hour, I will be teaching on the book of Joshua on my page and on the Good Shepherd page. All right, thank you so much. And end live video.